Bloomberg Audio Studios.
Podcasts, radio, news.
It's a competition. I loved it. It gave me energy. It gives me life. In telling my story. And also, this isn't about me, and it's not about me raising capital. We are investing in women. We are investing in people of color. Like, that 2% is women. People of color, women of color is less than a fraction.
Right.
Like, if I want to start a business and my name isn't Serena Williams, I'm going to have to take something out on my house. I'm going to have to go to the bank. Like, I'm just going to not be able to get VC money. But we're changing that.
All right, Alex. Serena Williams, the GOAT. I mean, it doesn't get any better than her when it comes to a professional athlete, but also a fascinating business person. You guys know each other. Like, you've got to know each other, especially as retired athletes, right?
I mean, we know each other very well. And the irony is very little to do with baseball or tennis. I know Serena as an investor. She's been investing since 2013. And she's passionate, and she's good, and she's as disciplined. And she has big, big plans, which you'll hear about.
Yeah. I mean, what I took away from this, probably more than anything, was how early on she was identifying business. And even this notion, her father essentially saying, the majority of your money you're going to make off the court. She has a great bit that I won't spoil about the checks from the tournaments. But, you know, this notion that she identified early on that there were opportunities, fashion certainly being one of them. But then how she became an investor is so interesting.
It really is. I know her well, and I was surprised on how much she opened up.
Yeah.
But there's no doubt that she has the same discipline and passion for investing as she did for being the GOAT in tennis.
And let's keep in mind, this is a career during which she earned almost $500 million. One of her earliest deals is with Puma. And one of the things that does for her is it unlocks her potential when it comes to fashion, because all of a sudden she's helping design her own outfits. And we know the cultural impact what she wore had.
And I felt it in real time, the impact that she made. I also thought it was really interesting, Mr. Williams, her father, and what impact he had. Not only a great inspiration person for her, but a great teacher in life for both girls.
Well, and also the idea that her father, who really set it all up for them, then essentially said, you manage your own money, figure it out. And so clearly that was something that drove her to make a lot of these key decisions. And then as she's going on in her career, going to Silicon Valley, understanding, investing, and this is something you guys get into and swap notes on, understanding brands. Puma was one thing, Nike is a whole different thing. You both have a relationship with that company. And so her awareness of the power of brands and the power of her own brand.
This is truly a business story.
Yeah.
I mean, the father is like a great founder.
Yes.
He was a great visionary. He was a great marketer. It was brilliant. On this episode of The Deal, Serena Williams.
All right. So please introduce yourself.
All right. Well, I never really get asked that. But I mean, you asked me to come here. So no, I'm Serena. I like to go by Serena. And what else am I going to say? That's really putting me on the spot.
How do you describe yourself these days?
How do I describe myself? I describe myself first as a mom. I'm a mom. I'm a businesswoman. And I'm a free spirit. We'll go with that.
You know, this notion of reflecting on what you did as an athlete, as you look back, you know, $500 million in earnings over the course of your career, how does that feel as you embark even further on your business career? That sort of financial success in sports.
Yeah. You know, when I started tennis, first of all, I'm from Compton, California, and I remember playing on these courts and, you know, my life was great. I never felt like I needed anything, you know? And so for me, money was never a motivation. I remember when I first started back in the day, they used to write out checks after you won your tournament, and I would always forget to get the checks. So at the end of the year, they would always have to say, Serena, we have all these checks for you. And I'm like, oh my God. So it was never...
You would literally forget to pick up the check?
Literally. And at the time, I had an accountant who would be like, Serena, like, they've sent me all these checks that you would forget to get from the tournaments. And so with that being said, that was never my motivation, to be honest. For my motivation and looking at the success that I had financially was never my starting point. My starting point was always like, I just want to win championships and I want to have fun and I want to be a great tennis player. And quite frankly, I just wanted to win a Grand Slam. And I honestly, for me, everything else was a bonus. And obviously it's great. Like, you know, I really, everything that I have, believe me, I worked really hard for. Nothing really came for free and nothing came easy. Like, I think everything was super hard working for me. But it is cool to look back and see the success that I've had financially, but also multiplying that now and trying to expand that. And then again, just considering like, what does that mean for me going forward?
So Serena, when we were thinking about this show, I started thinking about people that I like, respect, admire in the world of sports, in the world of business. And we had a business call recently, and I said, would you come on our show?
Yeah.
But I'm interested to know what motivates you today.
When you're used to being a champion, you're used to winning. And so that's something that I'm always motivated by is success. And what is success? I think success is different for a lot of people. And I think that's one thing that I think a lot of people get wrong. For me, success right now is having great investments. I think a lot of people's success is being a mom, which is super successful for me because that's something that I've always wanted to do in my life. Or maybe it's getting an A on your grades or whatever that is. So I think for me, the motivation is definitely success.
Both of us played for a couple decades, right? Very public. Me more domestically, you more around the world. But what's interesting is, Jason, you mentioned $500 million. You know, for me, it was about the same thing, but 90% of my money came from playing baseball on the field. With you, it's exact opposite. With yours is marketing.
Yeah.
How do you think about the impact that you've made, not only to all your partners, but how the ripple effect around the world of the business of Serena?
Yeah, it's so different, right? I think it's really interesting how I learned early on that your paycheck from tennis, maybe that's why I forgot them, should be your should be your smallest earning. Oh, that's my dad always told me growing up. So I always thought, okay, well, you know, partnering with the right people and also deciding who do you really want to partner with. Because for me, it's also about being very authentic with those partnerships, not necessarily partnering with a company that either doesn't believe in what you're doing or you don't really use and utilize. So I think throughout my whole career, I wanted to make sure that those partnerships were very authentic. They spoke to me and they also, you know, gave back in some sort of way, shape, or form.
So fair to say your earliest business advice came from your dad?
Most of my business advice came from my dad early on. He is incredibly, incredibly smart. I think he is way before his time. Everything that he did, I think even when it came to marketing us as tennis players, tennis is a very expensive sport and you can't make it from Compton. But I think it was his marketing that got us that attention, that garnered those press articles that had reporters coming out, or else we would have a very difficult time getting out of that in order to make it. But because of the way he thought about it and because of the way, because social media wasn't a thing back then. So because of the way he was getting that attention, it was able to push us up to the top. Obviously, our wins counted as well, which helped keep us up there in the early ages, like around the junior stage. But he always was way ahead of his time when it came to marketing and advice and business advice. And early on, he was like, you know what, you're going to manage your own money. Like literally, my first checks from whether it was Puma, like I got these huge checks. He's like, you figure it out. And so we had to figure it out. I'm literally living at his house in the bedroom next to Venus.
How old are you at this?
I was 16.
Wow.
And he's like, you know, most parents, you know, they take your money and they take something, but you know, he's like, you figure it out. And so I remember having to figure that out and having to learn how to manage from a very early age and not get crazy with it. And so he empowered us to do that.
You've said that wasn't as much about the money. It was about validation and putting you in a position to be in control in a way that you weren't before. Take us back to that moment. That's a fascinating deal.
Puma's an incredibly fascinating deal. My dad negotiated everything. And I have to say, Puma was probably about the money a little bit for me. I mean, it was a lot of money. I remember I was 16 years old. I had an opportunity to be with other companies, but they passed. So there was this deal that Reebok wanted to do with me and Venus combined. And my dad and my team was like, we're not going to do this. We're not going to package Serena with Venus because she's going to be amazing. Thank God that we didn't do that.
Yeah.
So we went to LA. Arnon Milchan at the time was one of the biggest shareholders in Puma. We're all in Hollywood. Like he also is like New Regency and owns was producing all these films. So we're in this Hollywood studio, walking in the hallway, all these famous movies like Pretty Woman and all these posters are on the wall. And we sit in this conference room and we negotiate. And it's like literally midnight. I'm 16. My dad's negotiating. They're going back and forth. And he wants me there for the whole time to make sure I know what to do in the future.
You're literally falling asleep at the table.
I pass out. I'm not falling asleep. I pass out at some point.
Wow.
I eventually wake up and they're still at it. And I'm just so upset. But what a learning experience. I learned so much from that experience. And ever since then, I'm usually behind the scenes. I don't do the negotiating, but I actually am behind the scenes. But no one really knows that it's actually me. Because my agent or whoever, if they get a deal, they come to me and they say, what do you want to do? And I tell them exactly what to do. But they obviously deliver the message. But it's super connected. We have such a great relationship when it comes to negotiating. They really trust my advice and my vision and where to go with it. And it all started at such a young age. But I also learned from that to ask for equity because I didn't at that time, which I probably should have. And then I ran into Arnon a couple of years ago, and he's like, yeah, you should have did equity. I'm like, thanks, Arnon. I was 16. You should have said it. And he's like, no way. I was like, okay. But it was also a really good opportunity to see how you can amplify a complete brand and what, I was able to help amplify that brand a lot.
Because there was a little bit of risk on both sides.
It was.
Right?
It was. I was the younger sister. At the time, no one, understood that you could have siblings that play sport and they can both be great. And at that point, it was always just one or the other. And so Venus was an amazing athlete. And so it was like, there can't possibly be another one. So it was a big chance for Puma, but also I was, doing really amazing things and winning. And I won a Grand Slam less than a year later after signing. So
not a lot of risk for them.
Not a lot of risk for them, really. But, and I think they saw that it was a lot of potential. And they saw it early on.
I remember, I don't know a lot about tennis, but what I do...
Good, because I don't know a lot about baseball.
I know that. I already know that. But we already know this. This is more for the audience. But one of the things, I remember when I was like 25, 26, I always used to remember you, not for your great plays, but for your fashion.
Oh, yeah.
And I just thought I wanted to see what Serena was wearing that day. Yeah,
awesome.
With her skirt or little dress and what Pumas. And I just thought that, and then the Anna Wintour connection. What is it about fashion that motivates you? Because you've always been on point.
So, my mom used to sew our outfits when we were younger. And I remember some of our earliest tournament outfits my mom used to make. And so she would be cutting patterns. And at the time, they're called these Vogue patterns out. And she would put them together and she would sew our tennis outfits or some other school outfits or whatever. That's always been a natural attachment to fashion. And eventually I learned how to sew and how to make things from old socks. And then eventually I would use old clothes when I was literally living in Compton and just learned how to do the craft, right? And that's kind of how it started. And eventually I went to fashion school, which is a wole story in its own. I feel like I have a zillion stories.
We're here for them, by the way.
How much time do we have?
As much as you want.
It was going to have to be like a 2-part session.
There you go.
And so eventually I went to fashion school. And then one thing I did love when I first came out with Puma is they gave me like a lot of opportunities to design some of the stuff that I was wearing, or at least say like, this is what I want to wear. And I knew that, listen, I don't look like everyone else out here. I don't play like everyone else, and I'm different. It's clear that I'm different. I am a Black girl and I'm playing tennis. And so I need to stand out. I don't want to wear the same kind of outfits that everyone else was wearing. And so Puma understood that. And then that kind of started the craze. And obviously Nike came on right after and just amplified it times a zillion, which made it even more cool. Like, which made me wear like a jean skirt in New York, which was kind of one of my favorite outfits. Yeah, it was insane. I still can't believe I did that.
Yeah.
I should have won that year. But anyway.
But let's talk about some of those specific fashion choices. The one that I think so many people remember is the catsuit.
The catsuit was legendary, yeah.
And so, like, take us back to that moment, like that choice. Like, how does that feel like when you put that on? Because you have said, I love this quote from you. It says, when there was an edge to how I looked, there was an edge to my game.
Absolutely. So that choice was definitely a Puma designer. And she was like, we want you to do this catsuit. And I was like, whoa, this is crazy. This is so cool. So the US Open came and I put it on and I was like, I'm not doing this. And I took it off. I was like, I can't do this. I can't do this. And so I had a second outfit in case I didn't want to wear the catsuit, which if you look at the Open in that year, I think it was 2002, I actually wore the second outfit in the second round. But I was like, no, I can't do that anymore. I need to own this catsuit. I need to own it. So yeah, it was just a really wild experience. But anyway, I took it off and I was like, I can't do this. And I'm like, I need to focus on my game, not on my outfit as I'm walking out on the court. And I asked a few girls in the locker room what they think. And they're like, oh, that's crazy. You can't wear that. You can't wear that. And I'm like, oh, I know. And for whatever reason, right before walk off, I just changed really fast. I threw the catsuit on, I zipped it up, and I just walked out. It was just like, oh my God. And then it was no looking back after that, really. So
did it feel as important in the moment?
No,
it didn't.
No,
okay, you didn't know, like, because that changes everything.
I always say that's when I got famous. It wasn't the 6 Grand Slams I won before that. It was a catsuit.
Yeah,
I mean, I was pretty young, and again, there was not a lot of stuff around body positivity at that time for a body that looked like mine in sport, because every woman at that time, not every woman, but a lot of women at that time had a different type of figure than I did. And so I was really different. I was basically a lone soldier, and it was just me. And even my sister looked like the typical athlete that was just amazing and long and lean. And I was just totally different.
Yeah.
And so it was without knowing, it was really leaning into that. And again, I didn't know. I was just doing it. And then it was a lot of memes, even before memes were memes.
Right.
First pre-meme. You looked amazing, okay?
Thanks.
I remember, at that time, it was no Instagram, but you broke the internet. It was Google everywhere. And I remember a lot of my teammates and buddies from back home sending me the picture saying, look how fly she looks, right? But in baseball, Jason, it sounds like it's the same thing in tennis, where you look good, you feel good,
Absolutely.
You play good.
Yeah.
And I love that, because that's exactly how I felt as a player.
Absolutely.
But I think we shouldn't underestimate the cultural power that moment had. And
it crossed so many people that weren't watching tennis.
Right.
People outside that were, okay, maybe in Compton because we were from there, but like every neighborhood at that point was watching it. But it just crossed all borders, and it made people from all walks of life want to just kind of watch tennis. And it was just like being that cultural person to bring in people that don't normally watch the sport. Again, I didn't understand at the time, but seeing later on, and even the people that started playing tennis after that, and the people that are currently playing because of myself and my sister, it all started these moments. It's crazy to think about. I've never even voiced this stuff. Like, oh my God.
But that, it changes the business of tennis.
Absolutely.
Also changes the business of Serena, right?
Yeah,
it elevates you, because, again, I feel like we need to keep stating, it's a given what you were doing on the court, but the impact you were having off the court just becomes magnified, to your point. What does it feel like as that is starting to take root?
It definitely feels different as that starts to take place. There were more contracts and more deals coming in and more time. But that's what it is about, right? Again, I'm thinking, I was told when I was really young that you make your money off the court. Tennis should be your smallest check in our sport at that time. And so I'm thinking, okay, this is what my dad was talking about. Like, how did he know? And so, and then it was also leaning into these designs even more after the catsuit. It was even more about leaning into that and how will I want to make my impact? I think that's about the time I started going to fashion school. and trying to understand how did I want to make my impact off the court.
Yeah.
Because it was always about having a plan B, even though I didn't necessarily need it, but it was just something etched in my head. My dad, you could fall, anything can happen. You could break your ankle. You have to have something to fall back on. And so all these moments in the back of my mind are like, okay, well, this is something that I can kind of do in the future.
Coming up, Serena talks about how she got into investing, how she signed with Nike, and how she met and works with her husband, Alexis Ohanian.
I remember a story with Phil Knight. And I was with Nike ever since I was 17 years old. And we had Ken Griffey Jr. on our team. And at the time, he was like the Michael Jordan. And I was telling Uncle Phil, like, I want my own shoe like Griffey. And at that time, we had Jordan, we had Griffey, and that was the gold standard.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget, we went to breakfast on a Saturday morning in Beverly Hills. And I said, Phil, when am I going to get my own shoe? And he says, Alex, if you get to a primary market, at the time I was in Seattle, I would redo your deal and I'll rewrite your contract. And I said, well, define a big market. He said, New York, LA, Chicago. I said, okay. The day I got where George Steinbrenner called me and traded me to New York, I got a call from Phil Knight. And he said, game on.
Wow.
And because of his loyalty, no contract, just a handshake. I've been with Nike ever since. I've never worn another shoe. But when I got to New York, I sensed things were different. The impact, all the opportunities that came. When did you feel that things were different and that whatever brand you went with actually had a ripple effect, not only domestically, but around the world?
Yeah, I think things got really different. I do remember, actually, now that you mentioned it, I actually forgot about the Seattle Mariners. See,
yeah, there you go.
She's a baseball expert.
Yeah,
It just happened. It happened right here. Yeah.
But I definitely remember you more in New York and how that whole world kind of exploded after that. But for me, I feel like everything changed after that catsuit, and not because of the catsuit. I think it was me winning the French Open, Wimbledon, and the U.S. Open in the same year. It's been years and years and years since anyone had done that. And winning those 3 Grand Slams in a row. And I have to say, at the time, there was so many great tennis players. There was Lindsay Davenport, there was Martina Hingis, there was Venus Williams, there was Monica Seles. And to dominate at that time with everyone that was so great was just unheard of. And so I think winning that U.S. Open just solidified everything and the outfit. And it was just like, well, this kid is amazing. How do I change that? How do I say, okay, tennis is great, but how do I extend that? And how do I expand that outside of tennis? Just understanding that pop culture, and then get invited to different things that I would be like, oh, wow, I'm at the Laureus Awards, or I'm here and I'm actually winning these awards. And, you know, except for the one in I lost, I'm still bitter about it. I'm not competitive at all.
No,
not
at all.
zero.
Yeah, the winning and losing thing is definitely not.
Doesn't play with me at all.
And so how do you take advantage of that? Like, what's the process by which, I mean, you've been with Jill for a long time, Jill Smollard. Are the conversations different? Are your ambitions growing? Like, how do you activate that moment where you are blowing up even more?
Well, Jill has been amazing. I feel like leaning into having someone, a woman in that position, I think, quite frankly, maybe things would have been different if I had a guy. Like, maybe I would have had an extra deal or two, but it was really about leaning into having a woman on my team. And
Interesting.
Owning that. We got ours when the time was due, when the time was ready, but it was sometimes where we had to fight a little bit extra. It's really just about really empowering not only yourself, but people around you and your team as well. Jill works at WME, amazing agent there. I don't even like that word, actually, but I don't know. I haven't been able to find a different word for that.
She's like your partner.
Yeah, exactly, like a partner.
And how long have you guys been?
Oh, since 2000.
That's incredible.
Yeah, it's been an incredibly long time. But it really was important to be able to expand and really start to think about what other things can you touch, what other things can you do, and how to go about doing that. So then you have to work from a plan. And then I would have a list. Like, I want to be with, at the time I wasn't with Gatorade. And I was like, my lifelong dream was to be with Gatorade because I remember walking around the corner from my tennis court, not my tennis court, the community court in Compton. We would walk to the convenience store and my dad would buy one Gatorade in a can and we would all have to share it. And it was like, I've always loved that. And I've always loved that story and I've always loved Gatorade. And I would always see the Mike, I want to be like Mike commercials. And I was like, I want that. And so we would always come together and say, what are some things that you want to do in a corporate, if it was corporate, what corporate companies you want to be with?
And does that resonate with you? I mean, because I'm sitting between these two very deliberate business people who have gotten to this from an early, I mean, do you remember identifying brands that you wanted to be with? Because it sounds like you had a literal list.
Yeah, I mean, for me, Gatorade's another one because I believe I won the Gatorade Player of the Year in high school. And I was like, oh my God, that's so cool. That's the first big award that I won nationally. And of course, I Want to Be Like Mike campaign was huge. It still is to this day. But for me, it was Nike. Nike to me was the ultimate North Star because Michael Jordan wore it, right? And we all want to be like those. I looked up to Michael and Magic and Bird.
Everyone looked up to Michael.
Right?
It doesn't matter if you were a girl, a guy, whatever.
Who did you look up to? Who inspired you?
When it came to branding, Michael Jordan, I think he really was able to do branding in a different way. And the aplomb that he has walking around is just second to none. Tennis-wise, I was actually inspired by Monica Seles. I just liked her. I thought she was really cool. And I liked how she grunts.
I do have a question. Was there a call where Jill called you and she said, all right, Serena, we got this company and this is what they're willing to pay you. And you said, what? They're willing to pay me that much? I've had moments like that, but I'm wondering if you ever had a moment like that.
Yes, I've definitely had that. And I'm like, let's start at yes. But let's not seem desperate. Let's wait at least an hour. No, let's wait at least a few days to call them back. But
And so sure. Nike. So let's talk about Nike for a second, because obviously Puma does one thing, but as you've alluded to, Nike does something altogether different.
Absolutely.
What was that negotiation like? What do you remember about sort of getting into business with them?
So I just remember I wanted to be with Nike. I had always wanted to be with Nike from day one. Even before signing with Puma, I was wearing Nike just because I would buy it. And then I would just, hopefully like sending some messages like, I'm your girl, your girl, like, hello. So that was always a company that I've wanted to be with. I think they have an opportunity to market, especially at the time. It's just like, if you want to be the best, then you have to wear Nike. That was seared in my mind. I wanted to be the best, and I think the best. They had the best stuff. They had the best marketing. They had an opportunity to put you, as we briefly, globally. And because tennis is not just in the United States, it's Australia, it's England, it's Italy, it's China. It's literally everywhere on the globe. And I can think of just a handful of companies that can reach that far. Yeah. And so for me, I wanted to reach that far, and I wanted to be with a company that could amplify that. And I'm not necessarily amplifying them. I wanted them to amplify me.
You talked about this moment in tennis that I want to dwell on for a second, because you're right. There are a lot of great players, but you very quickly just overcome all of them. You did something marked and notable for the business of tennis, for viewership, for attendance, for branding off the court. Was that apparent to you at the time? Or is it only apparent in retrospect?
No, it was very apparent because you would see matches. If I wasn't at a tournament or Venus wasn't at a tournament, the attendance was just different. And years that I was injured, oh God, or years that, stay professional, Serena. Don't say that. Years that I was injured or years that, I didn't play, you could just see the difference of, people that were attending the matches or viewers.
The U.S. Open is my favorite tennis tournament. It is the most electric setting. And then it's like the wattage is turned up when you walk out. That's just, again, that's factual.
I have to say you feel that. And I took on a lot of that pressure as the years continued. After 10 years, I would feel that pressure of like, okay, is Serena going to be in New York? And it was like not the not the Serena Open, but it was still like a lot of attention on, myself.
Right.
And Venus too, but it was a lot of attention on me.
Because the numbers are one thing, and the numbers are great. But what's the Serena effect on Serena? Like that pressure that in the sense of, that if you show up, that's better for tennis. That's better for the owner of the tournament.
I don't think that I try to always remain humble. And I didn't go in the tournament thinking that the US Open is still going on and I'm not playing, sadly. And it's still going to be there with or without me. So I always had that view and I always knew that. But at the same time, I also did know that for this amount of time, however that's going to be, it's going to be super amplified. And it's not easy, but you do walk in with your chest a little farther out and your head a little higher because also you are a target. Everyone at the end of the day isn't really happy that you're on the front page of all these papers. Right. And, they're just like, they want that. And a part of me is like, take it because it's a lot of pressure and it's a lot to hold when you losing is way bigger news than winning. Like if I won a match, it's almost last page.
Expected.
And but if I lose, it's like front center. So you don't want that story. And so having a lot of that pressure is definitely not fun, but it's also a privilege, and I think I would definitely prefer that pressure than not, if that makes sense.
Yeah, pressure is a privilege. It's right there, right when you walk out on the court, right?
Wow, New York is your favorite tournament. Wow.
But Jace, I want to segue to business because I was on a call with Serena early on and I was like, wow, I wasn't expecting that. And not because I had a prejudgment.
Hey, wait a minute.
No, I'll tell you why. Because the questions you were asking were so thorough. You had done your due diligence. You were asking things about it has to fit with my brand. And I knew you would know all the numbers, but I didn't know how authentic you were going to be and how sincerely, deeply in the weeds you would be.
Yeah. Deep in the weeds, we decided, right? It was too much.
But where does that come from? Is it from your playing days? Attention to detail?
I feel like, I am super attention to detail. I feel like I've always excelled at education and I love learning. And so, so for me, when it comes to my business, and like I said, I think we decided I was too much in the weeds and like literally what he's talking about, like being on calls with founders and actually helping founders understand like why their business isn't working and why it's not successful, or, like literally on every call, if we have calls every 6 weeks, I own that company. So not own the company, but I'm the representative for that company from my firm, SV, Serena Ventures. And so I'm like literally on the calls. I'm literally helping them understand how they're fundraise. I'm looking at their decks. And so it's a lot. So I decided, okay, that's too much. I can't go on like this. But I truly love investing. Yeah. And that's one thing that I kind of fell in love with from tennis. I would see these sponsors, because tennis is all sponsor based. And I would see like some of these sponsors come up, but I'm like, well, I have some little cash. Like, how did I not invest in Facebook? How did I invest in Airbnb? Or how did I miss Google? Or like, all these companies. I don't know if you've ever thought of that, but I'm like,
I missed a bunch.
How? Like, why? And I started to ask these questions, like, why am I out here breaking my neck and sweating when I could have invested in these companies and I could still be doing the same thing, but I wouldn't have to be such dire needs. Like, I've got to win US Open this year. I've got to pay these bills. So I literally would be on the court looking at these sponsors thinking, how did I miss this? And so I started asking questions, and I went to, at the time, San Francisco, Silicon area. Back then, it was a super boys club.
Yeah.
And I would ask questions. I remember even just sitting in Pinterest at the time one day and just learning from the founder there and just being a sponge and just trying to understand the business, understand investing, understand all this stuff a little bit more. And that's kind of how it all started.
Unfortunately, to your point about the Bay Area and underrepresentation, still there. What is it? 2% of VC funding
less
goes to women, even fewer when you start to go to other categories of underrepresentation. Was that part of the DNA of Serena Ventures from the beginning? How did that all...
No. another story if you guys want to hear it.
Yes,
so I started.
We're literally here for your stories.
So I started investing, and then I somehow got into early stage investing. I didn't realize that it was called early stage. I just liked companies that were starting, and then I liked growing them. One of them was Masterclass. I remember meeting the guys. David is one of the founders, and it was a room about this size, but this is all they had, and they didn't have anything else. And this is where Masterclass was. And I fell in love with the concept. I fell in love with what they were doing. And I was like, I want to be a part of this. And so it was just finding several different companies like that. Then Masterclass obviously became Masterclass.
Yeah.
And one day I was at a conference at JP Morgan, and Jamie Dimon was on stage, and he was talking to this woman named Karen Seidman Becker. But she's on stage and she's talking about women and VC and how women get less than 2% of all VC money. And I'm thinking, she misspoke. That's so embarrassing. Like, I'm embarrassed for her.
Right.
But that's how people should think about it. But this is genuine. My genuine thoughts is that she misspoke. So me being me, after she was done, I go up to her and I'm like, hi, yeah, I'm Serena. And then I'm like, well, you said something on stage, and I don't know if you meant to say this or if you said the number wrong, but something about 2%, less than 2%. And she was like, you know, Karen.
Yeah, of course.
So she's like the woman I dream of being.
Yeah.
And she's just like, she just tells me everything. And she just gives me all this amazing information in the span of 10 minutes. And I'm like, I didn't know. And so that's how Serena Ventures happened. From that moment forward, I was like, I need to start an investment company, and I'm not going to be able to change it, but the platform can help other people talk about it and change it. And so that's when, from that point, 3 years before I actually raised a fund. So I worked on doing more deals, ended up getting about 16 unicorns in my portfolio. So that way I would have a good track record, because I knew it wouldn't be probably easy for us to raise a fund first go around.
Yeah.
Until you get to know me and you get to know the story and you get to know all the investments that I had done. And that's what happened.
So Serena, as I hear you speaking, I can't help but think about, like, when I transitioned from baseball to business, and it's quite daunting. And I know for me, there was some imposter syndrome, but we're both former athletes. I'm a man of color. You're a woman of color. As you enter the world of capital raising, which is very difficult, especially when you haven't had the track record early on.
Yep.
How did that make you feel when you went to LPs, potential LPs, to raise capital?
It's a competition. I loved it. Okay. It's what it gave me energy. It gives me life. In telling my story. And also, this isn't about me, and it's not about me raising capital. We are investing in women. We are investing in people of color. Like, that 2% is women. People of color, women of color is less than a fraction.
Right.
Like, if I want to start a business and my name isn't Serena Williams, I'm going to have to take something out on my house. I'm going to have to go to the bank. Like, I'm just going to not be able to get VC money. But we're changing that. And we don't only invest in women. We don't only invest in people of color, but we're putting that on a platform. Our portfolio right now, as it stands, is 68% women or person of color. And that is unheard of in the VC world. And so, for me, it's all about diversity and bringing everyone together. We invest in literally everyone. We don't care what you look like, but we hear your story if you're a woman. We hear your story if you're a person of color. And a lot of people that look like me don't even get their story heard. And so when you do go to these LPs and you genuinely tell them a story, if they pass, they pass. But at least you get them thinking, you get them hearing, and maybe they'll invest in another fund that is doing the same thing. Maybe that has been around a little bit longer with the track record, a little bit longer, but they'll come around to us at some point, and that's kind of how I feel. But I love talking to LPs and just getting that story told on a platform that a lot of people don't have. And so it's super amazing for us.
The barriers you and your sister and your dad broke down when it came to tennis, does it feel like there's a parallel to what you're trying to do in business?
It does. And I don't want it to be. My daughter wants to do a sport. And I'm like, you have to do a sport you're not breaking down barriers, because mom has already done that and you don't need to do that.
Yeah.
And so somehow I find myself in a similar story without trying. I think eventually you're just drawn to, whatever you're drawn to. And without me realizing it, I was always drawn to this space, and it put me here, and I'm not going to change. I am taking a step back. I'm taking your advice. Like, oh my goodness, already done. But the impact will always be there and the impact will continue to be there. And I look forward to that.
Your dad was a partner. Your sister was a partner. And now Alexis is clearly a life partner, but also I'm fascinated, and I think Alex is too, about, these two entities, these two business entities sort of coming together.
Yeah.
And I wonder, because it's apparent to us as we look at it, the influence you've had on each other in terms of investments. What do you think your influence has been on him?
Well, I think my influence on him is just, he really wants that success. He really wants to be seen as that best investor. And he is. He's such a great investor. And I'm like, you already have that, but he wants it to be even more amplified. And also just explaining to him and just giving him my insights of, how to play the game. Because you have to be able to play the game, whether you're investing or whether you are in sport. It's who plays the game the best. And some of the greatest businessmen and investors play the game better than someone who actually might be better and smarter. And with him, we met because we were talking about investments all these years ago.
That's how you met?
That's how we met. Yeah. We were
you got to tell us that story.
Okay, you asked. I told you I have a lot of stories. So I was in Italy at a tournament, and I had been in Europe for a few weeks at that point. And then when you hear an American accent, when you haven't heard it for a few weeks, it's like refreshing. And so all week at this particular hotel we were staying at, there was these American people that were here for a tech conference. And so anyway, fast forward to a couple of days later, I have a match that day. I'm so focused when I play a match. Like, I literally would never leave the room. I would watch film all day, and I would be in my room, and it was a night match. And night matches are extremely stressful for me mentally because I'm having to be in the room from until 6 p.m. or 5 p.m. So I'm like, I don't want to be in the room till 5 p.m. today by chance. I was like, I just can't do this today. I just can't. So I left to go downstairs to have breakfast. Now, this is crazy. Like, come on. I literally would even eat breakfast in my room. I would never be seen. I was a ghost. So I went to have breakfast. Woo! Like, wow, that's such a big thing. What it was in my world. So I went downstairs, and that was late for breakfast. I didn't go downstairs till 11 because I was just fighting with myself. If I should be studying. That's how hard I was on myself. So I went down late, breakfast was closed, and they sent me to a different restaurant across the way, which had like a pool. And so I went to this other restaurant with this massive pool. There's all these chairs, and there's all these tables, and there's this pool, and there's on the other side of the pool, there's chairs. And so we're the only people. It's me, Jill, and my assistant at the time. And he was Australian. That's going to come back too. So we sit down, the only people there, and we order our breakfast, and we're just talking and laughing. And this guy walks in with a computer, and he sits down right next to us at the table right next to us. And I'm like, so upset. I'm like, do you see how big this area is? Like,
read the room, bro.
Are you kidding me? Like, does it look like we want people next to us? Like, it's huge. And I'm like, oh my goodness. So my assistant at the time, his name was Zane. He's like, hello, mate. There's this is an awful accent. It's Aussie. He's like, Aussie accent is the worst. Like, there's a rat over there. And he's saying that there's a rat. There's a rat. Because we're trying to get him to go away.
Oh my God.
And then he looks up and he's like, is there really a rat? And he's like, is there really a rat? Because I'm from Brooklyn and I'm not afraid of rats. And I was like, oh, you're from Brooklyn. And so that's how we started talking. And then so he said, I was like, what are you here for? And he's like, oh, I'm here for the conference. I was like, oh, cool. Who are you here to see? And he's like, oh, I'm not seeing anybody. I'm speaking. I'm like, okay, this guy has, excuse me. And anyway, he started talking about he did Reddit and he started Reddit. And then, of course, I hadn't heard of it. But now you get to know me. I'm like, I don't hear of anything. It seems.
Right. But what's interesting about this, like Jace, I've been in a lot of calls and Zooms with Serena and a lot of calls with Alexis. And by the way, they're both so different, but they complement each other so well. And they'll never mention they're each other's partners. They keep it so professional in their lane. Yeah. But then when they come together, they're
keep
really
it very
magical.
church and state.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what have you learned from him as an investor?
We keep it very church and state.
Yeah.
But I do go to him for advice. I'm like, okay, so what do you think about this? And how do you build these deals? I always pick his brain when it comes on building a team. I think he builds incredible teams. And also I always pick his brain on when it comes to early stage investments in terms of sectors. Like what's going to be another sector that's going to be exciting, whether it's AI or he's probably already invested in companies way before that sector is even popular, which is honestly incredible.
I will say one of my favorite stories, because, we follow sports very closely, was your influence on the Angel City investment, which, at least as it's been told, or as he's told it, Olympia was, getting into playing soccer.
So this is a false story.
Oh, it is?
Yeah, but let's correct it.
Yes, let's correct it.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm not a I'm like pro tennis. So the fact that Olympia was playing soccer, I was already salty about that. I think he kind of did that deal to make me mad because I'm like, let's do something in tennis because obviously let's amplify tennis.
Right.
But that's the real story.
But the part of the story that I love is that, and you tell us whether this is true or not, is that the baseline should be you need to do something for equal pay in sports. Is that right?
But you remember earlier I said that I don't want Olympia to do what I had to fight for equal pay, because I already did that through tennis. And for years, I missed out on equal pay because I'm fighting for equal pay. And I think what they're doing in soccer is amazing. But I think it's disgusting that they get paid so little money. It's not even a conversation to me. It's not even close. I actually watch soccer and I love women's soccer. I watch women's soccer. And the fact that so many people watch women's soccer and then they're getting paid, it's like what they're getting paid is upsetting. So I love that Alexis did that deal. Yeah. And I think what he did was really amazing there. But I was pushing for tennis. I was like, no, let's do something for tennis.
Because the work is...
But I did win because Olympia does not like soccer anymore.
Oh, is that right?
Well, for now. She changed her mind a lot. She does like tennis a little bit more now. So I'm like, yes.
Yeah. Listen, I think you can have some good influence there.
So, Serena, you're a few years into retirement. How do you measure winning today?
So for me, winning today is getting a deal. Right now, we have a deal on our table and we're trying to win it. And there's a lot of other big VC companies that want to be in it. And so that's a win for me. It's like, how do I figure out a way to win this deal? And so that's what we're working on. And I'm super excited. I feel like we're getting close, and I've heard rumors that we might get it. So I'm like, yes, we got to win today.
So Jay, so many times I get calls from founders and they're saying Serena Ventures is in. And I call Serena's like, we're not quite in yet.
I'm guessing people like to wave that around.
Exactly. Yeah.
We usually have millions of people wanting to be like you. But in this case, I'll say billions of young people that want to be like you. If someone is watching or listening and they want to be the next Serena Williams, what advice would you give them?
Oh, easy. It goes back to the very simple advice of work hard. Nothing, and nothing takes place of hard work. Like I was telling the story about me in Rome and how going to breakfast was a thing because that's how hard I worked. It doesn't come easy. And I work for everything, whether it was winning championships or whether it's being an investor. I went to San Francisco and I worked hard there. I had to fight my way to even figure out a way to get an idea of what these investments are like. So it's really just about hard work. It's no way around it. You can't go around it. You have to go right through it. And then everything will fall into place.
Love that.
This has been great.
And
we could
fun,
talk to you all
obviously.
day. And have fun?
And have fun, obviously.
Yeah.
Yes.
Are you having fun?
I am.
Yeah.
I am. Yeah. I think it's important to have fun, but I think it's important also to take a moment and just look up at the sky and give grace, or look at a tree and say, I'm here, I'm alive today. And I've been doing that lately, and that has made me just appreciate just being around, and that makes my day even better. So it's something new I'm trying. Sorry, I'm just trying to tell you guys something new.
Gratitude is very powerful.
Right.
It is.
Thank you. This has been awesome.
Awesome. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
You bet.
The Deal is a production from Bloomberg Podcasts and Bloomberg Originals. The Deal is hosted by Alex Rodriguez and Jason Kelly. Our producers are Victor Rivas and Lizzie Phillip. Our story editor is Siddhartha Mahanta. Our assistant producer is Stacey Wong. Blake Maples is our sound engineer. Rubab Shakir is our creative director. Art direction is from Jacqueline Kessler. Original music by Blake Maples. Casting by Dave Warren. Our managing editor is David Ravella. Our executive producers are Sage Bauman, Jason Kelly, Adam Comiskey, Brendan Noonan, Kelly LaFerriere, Ashley Honig, Trey Shallowhorn, Kyle Kramer, and Andrew Barden. Additional support from Rachel Scarmazino, Elena Sasangelis, Vanessa Perdomo, and Anna Mazarakis. David Dominguez is our director of photography. Our camera operators are Sage Passetti and Angela Reyes-Lata. Our gaffer is Pfeiffer Higgins, and our grip is Courtney Poyser. Katia Vinoy is our video editor. You can also watch The Deal on Bloomberg Originals, YouTube, and Bloomberg Television. Thanks for listening.